If you follow my channel regularly, you'll know that my mom has a situation with AmeriGas where she's had this house with my late stepfather, Chester Yerger, uh, since 2002. And that tank came with a house out there. And then they had one company, and that company gave way to AmeriGas. Um, but even though AmeriGas says they're charging my mom a fee on her account, there's never been an invoice that represents a yearly, charge for a tank. So fast forward to the events after the election. Note that this all happened after the November 5th election. First, AmeriGas had increased mom's payments to $300 a month. Then they suddenly asked for $3,100 payment, which is the balance. There was no reason given. They claimed that my mom had a late charge. She actually did not. Okay. Then Tracy, their customer service person, says, "Well, okay, we're going to revise this." And that was because I first learned, so I was thinking, who's the CEO? I need to talk to the CEO. And that's how I discovered that Michael Sharp had been hired. He hadn't taken office officially yet. I found Michael's personal email, and so I contacted him. He was kind enough to respond back. Thank you. And it's a very nice response. And so I said, Tracy, they now say they owe the 3,000, and he said, just sit tight and see what they do. So they turned around and took it off, and there was no payment. They went from 3,000 to no payment, to zero, and that was his action. Okay, these things don't just happen, and so everything was fine. And in January, we get a $589 monthly bill. I'm thinking, we're actually back to this. This was during the winter and everything. I was like, whew. Now, I can understand the 350 or something like that, but $589. And so, yeah, I made an issue about that, and I said, hey, this is a real problem here. We're back to this. So, long story short, we get a revision, but it's down to, you know, 326. And Tracy said, we'll see how this goes until April. So I paid the 326 on behalf of mom. And then they raised it to $405. And that's when I thought, what is going on here? And that's when I learned that, Georgia has an anti-price gouging law. Specifically, when the governor puts out a state of emergency that's weather related, you cannot lift prices beyond what the normal market prices that you've been charging the customer. And that's what AmeriGas was doing. Not just me, but to a lot of people. And so I made a stink about that. And when I say made a stink, I mean sent emails, made calls. It's very nice, okay? But just because mom is 90, she gets confused about, I hate to say that, all that stuff, but I think everybody here who's responsible for the care, just staying with your elderly parent, what's going on. And I hope have some sympathy for me, because the one hallmark of this is I have been beaten up by a lot of people who they seem to resent that I'm here. I'm supposed to be here. And I thought Michael Sharp, a CEO of AmeriGas, understood that. He says, it's good that you're with your mom. He put that in writing. Doggone right, it's good. So, Michael, why do what you guys are doing? Why allow your company to do what it's doing? So we got 2 other payments, and we had, because of the weather, we had an energy bill that was $600. I had miscalculated the propane payment that we owed, that not owed, but that I ordered, miscalculated how long it would last, and so we started to run out. Um, so we had to use the heater. The heater bumped up. So fortunately, EMC gets split the payments. We did that, paid that, um, and and there was some other and so at that point we were getting put we were in good shape, but then we get a contact from a woman named Jennifer who represents Michael Sharp, or says she does, and she had it was this is where things really got confusing, because first I was trying to get the payments down to like 250 because it didn't make any sense they should be as high as they were. They were charging us $159 a year ago. There was no reason for what we were being charged to be charged, right? And if you actually looked at the data shows that the propane industry as a whole made its most money ever because the demand was highest ever during last winter. That's a documented fact. But it doesn't mean you have to go around gouging people because of that. If demand is high, just deal with that. You got people needing it and everything, but to overcharge them during that period, particularly when a significant proportion of your customers are elderly because they're homeowners, you're dealing in rural areas for the most part, is wrong. And that's what's been going on. And so Jennifer, for reasons best known to Jennifer, um, I think they discovered that I had filed a complaint in April with the Attorney General's office regarding price gouging. And apparently, from that singular note, they decided they were going to disconnect. That's what I'm putting together. I'm thinking, so you're seriously actually going to do that, right? And they haven't got off of it. And Michael hasn't said, hey, you know what? We get a lot of customers, a lot of money. Why are we treating them? We don't need to treat them like that. But people treat you that way when they believe you're a little person and you don't matter to anybody. Like, who cares about your mother's health and all that stuff, right? Okay? That's how AmeriGas acts. I'm not the only one to say that. And that behavior should be illegal. And where it is illegal, where there's price gouging, it should be enforced. And where it's not enforced, the federal government should step in. I don't care who's in office. I refuse to believe that Donald Trump wants elderly people to die because they've been price gouged out of getting good energy. I refuse to believe that. All right? I absolutely refuse to believe that. I'm going to test it by taking it to the president himself, not in a physical way, like I'm going to march up there. No. In an entirely other way that's appropriate to contacting the president of the United States in the modern age, in my way. Because I don't believe that Donald Trump would allow that at all. And all I'm asking for through this is just treat my mom right. Give her a break. It doesn't matter if it's been this or Kaiser with healthcare with a doctor acting up. It just seems like there are these corporate institutions that feel like it's their right to literally abuse you. And it's not. It isn't. It isn't. And the public the easiest way the public can get involved in doing something is simply to make noise by making your own video blogs. I'll make them for you. That's what Zenny 60 Media is all about. In this instance, I won't charge. I'll just interview you. It's news. But more people need to have their voices heard beyond social media because it's a closed loop. And so what happens is that the social graph of the very corporation is impacted and changed. Okay? That's what needs to be done. That's an easy thing to do. You can do that in seconds. If you don't know how, call me. 510-517-7565. But all I'm saying for AmeriGas is give my mom a break. Jennifer sent a bill that consisted of the delivery she sent, which was to fill us up. Whereas, look, I was under the impression that since they were doing us a favor, they were going to pay for it. But what happened was the reverse. She says, we're going to give you this, and then we're paying for it. But the total is $1,771.81. And when you break it down, only 400 of that is actually the propane. Then there's fees that are tacked on for delivery and connection. I thought that was weird. We weren't disconnected. And then another weird fee, which obviously shouldn't be there, was $326 for 228 posted twice. In other words, the same date, the same amount twice, which is obviously a mistake, and yet she added it together and then says, blank you, pay me, like we're in Goodfellas or something, like they're the Godfather, like they're, mob boss or something. If AmeriGas thinks of itself as like a mob organization, that's got to be changed. That's got to stop. Okay, that stuff went away with Tammany Hall. That's got to stop. All right? It really did. Okay, there was Lufthansa heist. I get it. That was 71. I get it. But I'm saying for the most part, give me a break. Okay? Get the word out about this organization. It's got to change. I don't care how big an organization is. Size does not allow you the right to do evil. It should never be that way. If anything, if you take a look at the number of different types of law that have emerged since the emergence of the American corporation, now the international corporation, but the American corporation in this context, our laws have been designed to reflect the fact that that size can do harm. And so the laws essentially together, if you think about it, mitigate that. This is one of those cases. That's why it's so important that Chris Carr, who's running for governor, as Attorney General, make AmeriGas stop doing this and join forces with John Ossoff and Reverend Warnock, our two senators. So this is a bipartisan issue, because it is a bipartisan issue. I don't care what color the person is, but I do care if the person is elderly. You don't treat your elderly like this. And I won't allow anybody to treat my mom like this without figuring out a way to make them stop. That's appropriate to the technology that I use and to what I believe is right, and to the fact that I believe that there's an inherent good in everybody. Yeah, it's called empathy. Please subscribe to Zenny62 on YouTube and bookmark ZennyReport.com. And thanks for watching. And share this. Okay, see ya.